Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, where we are building a community of people who are in the midst of midlife, sharing our stories and learning from each other along the way. Each week, I'll have a guest join me to discuss a topic that impacts our lives and touches on some aspect of midlife. We'll discuss relationships, transitions, health and well-being, parenting, careers, and more. My goal is to encourage and support you and help you thrive as you navigate this adventure of midlife. Join me here each week for the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. Lindsay Leahy, welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be back.
I am so glad you are back. Yes, I should have said welcome back. Goodness sakes. Can't even say it's early in the day anymore. I don't have that excuse. Too far in. Goodness sakes. Well, I'm so glad that you are here to talk about the Enneagram. Before we get into that, can you introduce yourself and just share about what you do and what you're up to these days?
Sure. So in my day job, I am the founder and dream builder of the Restoration Project. So we are a coaching practice that invites people to dig into identity and intentions, who they want to be, who they are at their best, and how they live that out.
I love it. I love it. You're also an author.
Oh, yes. I wrote my first book that came out in October.
That little book, that amazing book. Yes. I actually am in the middle of reading it for the second time.
Oh, Nicole,
because
you're the best.
I felt like, you know how when you watch a movie and you go back and watch it again and you like pick up things that you missed the first time?
Yes.
That's kind of what I'm doing now. Not like, I read it all the way through and thought, got all my nuggets and all my good information. And then I'm reading it again and going, oh, I don't remember this. I need to dig into this. And
thank you.
It's so good. I will link in the show notes how everyone can get their hands on a copy because it's a must read, in my opinion.
I've been going back to it over and over too, as significant life events have been happening for me, and just using the frameworks and tools to reground in how do I want to move forward intentionally.
I love it.
I hope people will use it that way.
It's
Thank
awesome.
you.
It's just so great. Yes. So proud of you. Just what a journey that has been. And just to get to see you flourishing and all that has been really fun to do and follow along with that. But we know each other. You were on the podcast at the end of 2024. And I've been learning so much about the Restoration Project. I attended a workshop in December, which was amazing, which really clarified a lot of things for me. So thank you and your team for that wonderful experience. I will link to the Restoration Project in the show notes if you are interested in learning more about their programs. They have a great new self-paced course available. Check it out. Tons of resources there for everybody to get involved with. So today we are talking about the Enneagram 8.
Oh my.
The Protective Challenger. I don't know if you resonate with that title at all as an Enneagram 8. I love it too. I love it. It is. I love that title. But our Enneagram 8s are truly protective and challengers, and sometimes challenging. And I can only say that because I'm married to an 8. My husband is an 8.
True.
No, I'm teasing. But they're definitely people you want in your life, for sure. So before we get into what it's like for you to be an Enneagram 8, I'm going to just briefly go through the core motivations. Every Enneagram type has core motivations. So the type 8, the protective challenger's core fear is being weak, powerless, harmed, controlled, vulnerable, manipulated, and left at the mercy of injustice. The core desire is protecting yourself and those in your inner circle. Core weakness is lust or excess, so constantly desiring intensity, control, and power, pushing yourself willfully on life and people to get what you desire. And your core longing is that you will not be betrayed. A lot of people will describe an 8 as like a snowplow. They plow paths for other people. And in some circumstances, that is a beautiful thing. And then in sometimes not so much. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. Before we get into that though, how did you first learn about the Enneagram and what was so interesting to you about it?
So way back in a different corporate job, I had a person on my team getting their master's, and they actually went through the Enneagram and then had me take the assessment. And so that's kind of when I started learning about it. Didn't really do anything with it. I mean, I thought, wow, that's interesting and resonates. And that's when I found out that I was an 8. But then probably 2 years went by and The Road Back to You, that book by Susan Stabile. I read that, and then I kind of got a lot more interested and then started reading The Sacred Enneagram and all these Enneagram books just to learn more about myself and my type. And then started having conversations with people about it. We've actually done a couple of high-level workshops for people.
Nice. Oh, I love that.
So it's just I love that a lot of the personality typing that I've done is more corporate.
Yes.
And this one is a lot more personal and brings in your personal experience and story. So I just felt seen and known and a little bit exposed in a different way.
Yes. It can do that. It can do that. Right. And that's part of the discovery process of the Enneagram, is kind of acknowledging those places where we're doing really well and strong, and then the parts that maybe aren't where we want them to be. And what do we do with that? And it can feel a little bit vulnerable.
Yes.
Which isn't a favorite thing for the 8, but it's good. It's good to do those things. And when you found out when you were an 8, when you realized what an 8 was all about, how did you feel about that?
I was excited.
Yeah.
I love, but when you're reading the descriptions of core fears, core desires, I always have desired intensity.
Yeah.
Like adrenaline junkie, motorcycles, cliff jumping, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I don't think until I looked further into the descriptions of that can be destructive. Like that was not even on my radar, that living in those extremes has a downside.
Right.
And now I see that very differently.
Right. Exactly. Right. And that is part of the Enneagram 8's challenge, is living in that constant state of intensity or seeking intensity and control.
Yes.
And how does that play out in life? And if you're kind of unaligned in all of that, it can have some destructive, results sometimes. So,
but it's interesting because our society kind of rewards the aggressive pusher, doer, getting things done,
absolutely,
never resting. So that level of intensity, again, until I was probably in my 30s, I just didn't even know. I was always just like, well, why aren't people working harder? Why aren't they trying harder?
Oh, I love that you said that, because that is, I've heard that from mother. I'm married to an 8. I think I might have already said that, but I hear things like that from him sometimes in different situations. But no, and I think that's a very natural sentiment to have, because that is what our culture and our society rewards here in where we live and in America. And that intensity, that seeking, that drive, that ambition. Ambitious people are rewarded for that.
Yes.
Right? The drive, the seeking out. And, again, I think when you're in that kind of healthy, aligned place with that, it can have such incredible results and outcomes. It can be really positive. And, again, on the converse side of that, it can really hurt. And I don't mean even hurting you. It can hurt. I mean, there can be other results of that. So it's really, how do you channel that in the right direction and the right way, and so that you get the results that you're wanting, that are helpful to yourself or other people that are involved in your life. And, again, 8s that's just innate within them. They have that. That's just, it's there. And it's not something to be squashed. It's something to cultivate, I think. So that's awesome. So 8s are people who demonstrate strength and really tend to exhibit very natural traits with leadership. They can be powerful change agents because 8s do not, they seek justice. They seek, to help the underdog or whatever the case might be. And that could be within their inner circle, professionally, and other areas of their life. Do you find that this applies to you, and how does that kind of show up for you in life?
Yeah, when I reflect on being a natural leader, I have come to realize that a lot of that was more out of a desire to control the situation and the outcomes and not put myself in a position of vulnerability. So I'm not even sure that I wouldn't have necessarily called myself a natural leader because I want to lead. It's because I don't want anyone else telling me what to do. So let me step into the seat first.
Yeah. Why not? Right?
Yes. And again, that goes all the way back to childhood and the environment that I grew up in, and always trying to, on high alert, make sure everything is okay. And then when I got into school, I probably naturally stepped into those spaces and then got rewarded for that. And then in corporate America, especially as a salesperson, the more controlling and driven and demanding that you are, the more successful you are and the more you're rewarded. And so it just, unfortunately, a lot of the spaces I stepped into probably solidified some of the negative qualities of the 8 in me without me even realizing.
Right. You weren't consciously aware of that. But I think, that's a great point, because I think certain behaviors are definitely rewarded. So when we're getting that positive input, why would we not keep doing the thing that is getting us that? Because that feels good.
Yes.
Right. And so I understand why 8s tend to step in those roles. And also your point about stepping into that leadership capacity intentionally or not intentionally as the results of wanting to control, because you don't want to be subject to someone else's control or being vulnerable.
Yes.
That's very natural. I would be surprised if you had not done those things, because I think that's an 8's natural tendency to want to lead in whatever way they feel they have to as kind of a protection.
That's it.
And
that's what I'm challenging myself today is like, what's my motivation for wanting to step into this space and reminding myself I'm safe. Like even with my team, I've got a great team. I don't have to do it all.
Right.
I don't have to control it all. They got it, but I have to be able to have that conversation with them and say that out loud, because sometimes those behaviors are so deeply ingrained in me that I need other people's, I need to give other people permission to speak into me when I'm stepping into some of those patterns.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it takes everyone a different level of security and trust to get there. And so if you're listening to this right now and you're like, wow, I think I might be an 8, just know that it takes time and reassurance. And I think also experiencing, when you do let go a little bit, all the wonderful things that can happen to really get comfortable with that. And so just give yourself a lot of grace and a lot of patience in that, because it's just not natural let someone else do that, especially when, your core, as I just mentioned, the core weakness and fear is about being vulnerable and feeling like you don't have power in a situation, or being controlled or being manipulated, so just give yourself a lot of grace. And I'm glad that you've recognized that. That's huge. Yeah. That's awesome.
Another thing I've realized, Nicole, is I have to, because my personality is so strong, I have to initiate the change, right? I have to say, I'm going to intentionally step out of this, or I'm inviting you to give me this feedback, because people around me find me intimidating. And so instead of completely changing who I am, I've tried to think about how I can change the interactions or the environment to set it up so that I can, because I work with a 2 and a 9. Well, they're never going to speak up to me. And a 3. She speaks up to me more than the other 2. Yeah. But those 2, I've had to give permission and initiate and invite. And then it happens more naturally because they're nervous.
Of course. Yeah. What a gift you've given them. That's a gift, honestly, that you've given. And I'm sure that they do recognize that gift, because 4 and 8, that's big time. I mean, that's a big deal to invite someone in and let them, first just letting them in, period. And then also letting them take that leadership or that role or that project or that to do or whatever the thing is that you are saying, I'm inviting you in to help me with, or take this, or whatever it is. That's a big deal. So very healthy.
Thank you.
Very
I'm trying.
healthy. I love it. It's one day at a time, you know, we're all on that road. And again, I think that's why I found the Enneagram so profoundly impactful, is that it gives you a roadmap. It gives you a path. And again, one day at a time, one step at a time. Sometimes it's a step forward and 2 steps back, whatever, but it gives you that path to see how you can get there. And it just takes time, you know, and grace and patience and everybody being willing to acknowledge where they need support or need help. And it sounds like you're doing that. And that's wonderful. Well, to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, because again, I think 8s are those steady leaders. I always think about this when I'm thinking about my husband. He's just steady. Like with him, he is who he is, and he doesn't have the wild swings of, you know, highs and lows. At least that's just his personality. So he's always kind of, you know, my rock. You know, 8s are just, to me, very steady. Unless, you know, maybe you've hit them in a real stressed out, overwhelmed point, but we'll get to that here in a second. So as you mentioned, sometimes 8s can show up as a little bit controlling, a little confrontational. They don't fear confrontation. I know some 8s, I'm not naming any names, my husband, but they sometimes even like a little confrontation. Like it kind of fires him up a little bit. Like, I want to see if I can make you squirm a little bit, you know? And he would say he doesn't do that, but I've seen him go at something and just to kind of see if he can poke the bear a little bit. But 8s fear being seen as weak or vulnerable. But the thing I want to point out in all of that, because it sounds like I'm talking negatively about an 8, but one of the things that people don't realize is that of any type on the Enneagram, the 9 types, 8s have some of the biggest, most generous, tender hearts that they protect fiercely.
Yes.
Right?
That's why our walls are high.
Yeah. You get through all the muck and then you get this really wonderful heart. How has this shown up in your life? Have you seen that? And what has that been like as an 8 to kind of give people that big, wonderful heart, that gift of yours that you have?
So the way that part of me got shut down for a long time for a lot of different reasons, family dynamics, relationships that didn't go well, betrayals, you know?
Sure.
And so I think for me, I tested a lot of relationships. I do the same as your husband. I want to know that you're going to stick around. So I'm going to push you up against the wall to make sure that you're not going to betray me, which I recognize now is not healthy. Well, there's maybe another way to go about that. But one thing that has helped me reconnect with the tender part of me is remembering who I was as a child. And I just always have this picture of little Lindsay running around in my grandma's front yard in the sunshine with wild hair. And that picture reminds me of who I really am deep down inside. And then I've had to remind myself that it's okay for that person to show, and that strength and resilience actually looks like being that person and being open-hearted, even if and when somebody hurts me, and coming back to that, not shutting down, because that's so lonely. Yeah. When we're not letting people in. But it just took me a lot of trying to open up, and I had to have a lot of safe people and experiences that allowed me to remember that at the end of the day, really nobody can control me. No. That's in my head, and I'm safe, and I'm going to be okay no matter what. That was not the story that I was telling myself. And so until I could change that narrative, I didn't feel comfortable. And that's just been within the last couple of years, feeling comfortable being open-hearted and staying open-hearted even when people hurt me.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that that has shown up for you, because I think it would also be exhausting trying to keep people kind of at arm's length, holding them away from you, or that not trusting that you're safe with that person would have to just be mentally and emotionally very draining. As hard as it is to open up and show that more tender, vulnerable side, I would think that would have been even more exhausting than really letting people in. And
it is, but you don't know, because
right.
that's all you've
You're
ever
just
done.
operating. Like that's how your operating system is, right? That's just how you know. Yeah.
So I've had to really how am I feeling? Not what am I thinking about, but how, because I would turn everything into logic,
Right.
So that really getting in touch with how I'm feeling and that playful, fun side of me helped me. Eights tend to be very serious.
Oh yeah.
And we need to, life is short.
That fun, and playful side too, right? We won't go into wings today, but every number has a wing, and it's the number on either side, right, of your type. So there's an 8-wing 7, there's an 8-wing 9. And so letting that 7 wing impact you a little bit is a good thing. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, it helps to just be able to let down and be spontaneous or have adventures or whatever the case may be. Let people in a little bit.
Because we want that. We want to be connected to somebody deeply. But I think a lot of us eights, again, because of what shaped us, don't, maybe for me, like a lot of the people closest to me hurt me. And so that just creates a certain pattern that gets really hard to undo.
Right. Especially if it's happened more than once, it's not just a one-off thing. This has happened to me multiple times. I need to put the walls up, keep people out. That's just protection, right? It's just protection. And again, back to the core motivations. That's one of the core fears of an 8 is not being protected and safe and vulnerable and all that kind of jazz. So we talked a little bit about kind of healthy or growth or alignment. And again, every type of the Enneagram goes to a different number in stress and a different number in growth. And in stress or unalignment, 8s move towards the unhealthy traits of a type 5. And I'm going to read a few of these traits and see if any of these resonate with you when you are feeling stressed, overwhelmed, kind of at wit's end. See if any of these resonate for you. And these are, again, the unhealthy traits of a type 5. So you might withdraw or become secretive and isolated and observe from afar. You might detach from emotions and gain more knowledge to be on the offense, become more cerebral and less physically assertive and action-oriented, distrust people and become cynical and harsh, or use your intellect to belittle others. Do you see any of those when you're...
All of those.
Yeah, all the above.
I mean, when I read that list to my husband, he was like, oh yeah, that explains you in stress to a T, my friend. And it's I know for me, when I quit caring about how it feels and how other people feel, I'm in a bad place. That's when that's a trigger for me to know I need to take some time and regroup. And I have a fundamental belief that all people are good people, that even the worst human beings, their behavior, when it's at its worst, it's just acting out of wounding. So again, that cynical side, when that starts to creep in, I recognize that's not who you really are and what you really believe. You are under stress. You need a break.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, honestly, that component of the Enneagram is one of the things that I think can help us to begin to instill change within ourselves, understanding where we go when we're stressed, overwhelmed, unaligned, whatever terminology you want to apply. That honestly can really not only help you if you're trying to figure out your type, but once you know your type, really provides you that kind of that rumble strip, right? That warning, like, you're heading down, this road, as much as, when you're on the highway and you're driving and you veer too much over to the side. Whoa, wait, let's pivot. Let's redirect here a little bit. Identifying those unhealthy attributes can be so powerful.
So helpful. In my leadership role, what you said, we tend to isolate or withdraw. So again, I have in my head, I sing this song to myself. Here I go again on my own. And whenever I'm in that space, I'm like, Linz, this is a you problem, not a them problem.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Because I think and again, I've observed that with the 8 that I know, they shut down and just withdraw. And that's huge. That's a big flag right there to say, oh, no, wait. And it doesn't mean you have to jump right back in with people again, but you recognize it and you go, what do I need to do?
Yes.
For me to get me back closer to showing up, as the best version of myself that I can in this moment. And again, it's that little warning sign, that little flashing red light that helps with that. So on the other side, let's talk about this because it's more fun to talk about the healthy side, right? The healthy type 8, when you're moving towards alignment and growth, moves towards the healthy side of a type 2. So tell me if these resonate for you when you're feeling just especially, heading towards a path of growth or alignment. You plow a path on behalf of others. We talked about 8s being like a snowplow, so I think that makes sense. Become more thoughtful and caring towards others. Open up to others and reveal their vulnerable side. You have more empathy and compassion. You become more considerate and quicker to serve others. You put the needs of others before your own, and you show more of your feelings, your tender heart, and your soft spots.
Yes.
Yeah. All of the above.
All of the above.
Love it. That's awesome.
The putting others' needs before yourself, I think, was a really important one for me as an 8, because I don't tend to selfishness because I am selfish. I tend to selfishness out of protection. And so that's always another indicator for me. Like when I'm thinking about the changes that we're going through at work or some of the things that we're going through at home, and if I can have compassion and empathy for others and what others need, then I know I'm in the right zone.
Right in the right headspace.
And that practice also helps me when I'm feeling stressed or feeling unhealthy. I try to step back and in my journaling time, just think about the other people and even put my hand over my heart, thinking about the other people and putting myself in their shoes to get me out of my own headspace.
Yes. I love the practice of journaling, first of all, is amazing. But thinking about others before self is so impactful. Again, when I think, and you made such a great point about you're not being selfish because you're a selfish person, because you're not. You're being selfish because you're protecting, right? And so to say, gosh, I can serve others well out of a pure compassion for that person. And it's okay, because I think showing empathy and kindness and compassion is somewhat of it shows your vulnerable side a little bit, right? It shows that tender, softer side. So that in and of itself isn't always a natural thing for 8s to do. And when you are in growth or health or alignment, it's great to see that, because again, it's taking you out of your natural need to want to protect and go in that way. So I love that. I love that you do that. If there's another 8 out there listening, is there anything you would want them to know or any encouragement you would want to share with them about being an 8? Because I think 8s are awesome. I think everybody needs a good, strong 8 in their life. So
I think just really thinking about what are those core beliefs and stories that you tell yourself regularly, and are those helpful and serving you? Because I don't think I recognized until getting deeper into the Enneagram how much of my wounding was creating these narratives that then would positively, but negative, would reinforce the negative behaviors. So once I got a hold of those beliefs and those stories, then I could start to do something about it. and think about it differently. And for me, it always helps. My number one go-to is think about the other person. If I'm in stress or struggling in a relationship, I force myself to think about what's the other person going through? How might they be feeling? And I think I shared this earlier. I take the initiative to open up that conversation or to repair the relationship, because I've just recognized that most other types feel intimidated by eights. And so that relationship may never get repaired unless you take the initiative to repair it.
That's real good right there. That's a word. That is a word. So if you're an 8 and you're listening, just know that you may need to take that role. And if that feels vulnerable to you, it's okay, because it might be the way, that first step to repairing a relationship or forging an even stronger relationship that exists. So I think that's great. I love that. I don't know that we can add any more goodness to that, because that's great. I love it.
I don't think as 8s, we recognize how, I'm going to use the words that other people say to me, how strong and powerful we seem.
Yeah.
When in reality, we are soft and struggling on the inside most of the time.
Yeah. Right. You just don't show it. Yes. Right. You're got that protection up big time.
So you've got to accept that what you're showing the world and how you're feeling on the inside are two different things. And that's your responsibility to, take ownership of that. And
absolutely. I love that. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for being on. This was so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like me to discuss on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com or direct message me on Instagram @Nicole Stute. Thank you for listening.